Exactly. Go, Dr. Miller. There you go.
Okay. All right. Good evening, and welcome to Couch's Conversation with the Doctors. I'm Dr. James Miller, and we are so glad that you're joining us this evening as we meet here every Monday night to have discussions and hopefully give some information that is going to be useful to help improve the health of our community. So we're going to start this evening by going around the room and going around and having everyone to introduce themselves. Just in case you've not seen, you'll at least know who it is that is discussing today. So we're going to start with Dr. Terry Mason. Dr. Mason.
Dr. Miller, thank you so much, and good early afternoon, early evening. And I'm always honored to be here with my colleagues, with the congressman, and also always, as everyone else does, hopes that we get an opportunity to give some people some information that they didn't know that they can implement and change the quality of their life in a very positive way. So that's our super goal, but we just want you to make sure you listen. And if you have a question, please ask us a question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Mason. Dr. Graham, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Mill. I'm a retired physician. I worked in the western suburbs for 30 years, then joined the congressman in his office for 2 years as a fellow. And it was an eye-opening experience that made me interested in public health and public policy. And it's a real honor to be here with my colleagues, and I'm going to try and answer your questions as best I can.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Graham. Congressman Davis.
Well, let me thank all of you, gentlemen. I had a very interesting day today. As a matter of fact, I started my day meeting with the president of Malcolm X College and a businessman who runs a not-for-profit who wanted to do some things with Malcolm X or with the city colleges, period, but wanted to use Malcolm X as the anchor. And so we had a very wonderful, interesting discussion about the potential. And of course, you know that Malcolm X is training health personnel.
Yeah.
And I was just excited to hear about all of the programs that they've got going. Then later on this afternoon, I met with 3 researchers from Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital who are involved with the issue of what used to be called, and many people still call it, SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. And of course, they're concerned about the numbers of children who pass away during the first year of life. And we don't really exactly always know why. I'm saying medical science has not been able to determine concretely. And you know, I spent a lot of time at church yesterday. Matter of fact, I visited 8 churches yesterday because we had a little program with the police, law enforcement people, where we were taking Easter baskets, and we had some policemen who were dressed up as bunnies, and we just had ourselves a wonderful, wonderful time. And we managed to do all 8 because we weren't spending a lot of time in one place. But as I was meeting with these researchers this afternoon about SIDS, I thought of King Solomon, you know, and the incident with the ladies who had the baby. and one baby died and the other one lived. And there was a little argument about who did the baby belong to. And I remembered from the Bible that one lady said, well, since we can't reach an agreement, let's just cut the baby in half and give me half. And of course, the king, being wise like you gentlemen, probably would have did like the king, use the data and the analysis to make maybe the appropriate decision. But I really was thinking about that as I was meeting with these three wonderful researchers from Rush about SID. So we'll be doing some things with them and raising awareness about that issue. But on Saturday, myself, State Representative LaShawn Ford, and State Representative Camille Lilly met with the head of the Chicago Medical Society and some of the physicians who work at West Suburban Hospital, or at least were working at West Suburban Hospital, to talk about their experiences and to raise the question and to share with us how much they think the hospital is needed,
Mm-hmm.
and the kind of dilemma that the community that make use of it and rely upon it, the dilemma that that community will face should the hospital not be able to reopen, and how disruptive that will be for healthcare delivery on the west end of the city, especially in the West Suburban community, in the Oak Park area, and in the Austin community and Brighton communities and other communities there, which brings to mind that no matter what we do, let me ask a question. Why do you gentlemen think it is so difficult to change the health status of a community or of a group in a community that, notwithstanding what we provide, and goodness knows healthcare delivery has come a long way since I first got interested in it, and it really has advanced research and technology, training, different modalities of treatment, things that physicians have learned, and how impactful those things have been and continue to be. Yet, to change the health status of a community or of a population group seem to be very hard. And so I just throw out on the table and ask you gentlemen, why do you think it is so difficult to change the health status of a group within a community?
Well, I'll sort of start this conversation by saying it's probably a multiple reasons for this, and they work from both ends. They work from the end of the individual as well as the end of the environment or those institutions that are in charge of caring for people. So, so if I sort of look at the individual end, um, as people, we tend to be creatures of habit, which means that we tend to do things the way that we learn how to do them, and we tend to go on with that. Now, obviously, in a situation with the healthcare, there has to be continual teaching and making resources available for people to make changes. um, and so those things are interrelated. So sometimes, so the overall system, or in terms of availability of certain things, maybe doing well in certain areas, but in some areas, those the ability to access the care is not doing as well. And so those are two parts of the system that are coming from two different aspects, but yet and still they have caused that same unwanted outcome to come. In other words, if the individual is not changing from things that they need to change from, then they're not going to improve their care. If the system is not really meeting the needs of the people, then that too will hinder the improvement in care. So I think we have some of the same things that are going on, and then I think another part of it is that we as people, there are many things that affect our health. It isn't just well, am I getting my immunization? Am I going to the doctor? There are a lot of different things that happen. Some you don't have control of, and so these things come to play in significant ways in people's lives. And so it's a very complex thing, a very complex issue that ultimately does have a significant effect on the health of the people of the community. And so it's so many different things that causes stress. It causes people not to be able to use their resources in the way that they need to be able to use them to get better outcomes. So there's a lot of overcoming, and there's a lot of need, and sometimes it often it is very difficult to get those needs met in these environments that we're in. And life is not a static process. It's not something that's just always the same. There are ups and downs. There ebbs and flow to it. And so these ups and down situations um, affect your body. It affects your mind. It affects your well-being, and that has a significant effect on how your health is going to respond.
Anyone else? I come to this sort of from a planning perspective, and often we make comparisons. I hear people say in the west side of Chicago, maybe the West Garfield, Lawndale, Austin communities, that life expectancy is seriously different in these communities or South Side from people who live in the North Loop area or who live in the downtown area, or people who live on the north sides of the city or along the lake shore, that people who live there can expect to live 20, 25 years longer than a person living in North Lawndale. And it doesn't necessarily mean, I guess, if a person moved out of North Lawndale and then moved along the lake shore, that their probability of living is going to be longer just because they live in a different community. But there are levels of mobility in terms of where people decide to live. But more importantly, it's probably how they live than where they live, in all likelihood. How do we respond, Dr. Mason, to that notion?
Congressman, that's a big pill.
Yeah.
And many of us have been taking bites off of that, or trying to get people to eat pieces of it for a long time. And I think we have to start with the premises that good health is not just a function of having medical care.
Yeah.
That's not it. Much of what requires good health, and Congressman, you know this and talked about it many, many times, and things that happen at the community levels where they work, eat, play, and get educated has a lot to do with how well they do. And we've looked at those studies many, many, many times. If we think that we can be myopic or even astigmatic and think that we can come up with something really quick and give to people, that's not true. That's not going to work. It has never worked, and it never will. The fact of the dilemma is that when we look at the differences between the resources and the quality of the resources and the availability of resources that you've mentioned, not to mention just the ones that were there, these are all the things that play a role in it. It's why you got, and I can go to this and I'll stop at this. You could have a church in a particular community and there's lots of people that go there. There's lots of activity that's going on in that church. There's active groups for both the older and the younger children, and it seems to just be thriving. Whereas when you don't see that in some of the communities, there's other conclusions that you could begin to think that you could hypothesize as to why that might be so. And I'm just saying that the other thing is when we look at all the other things, sources of food and availability of food, safety, all of those things take into account the things that create differences in what we see. Just to begin.
Yeah. I also think that there's a real problem with the amount of misinformation and disinformation's out there. It's no longer a straightforward path. It's no longer one book that you can read or one TV channel you can go to. There are thousands of different sources. And so much of this is based on trying to sell you a product with claims that may not be proven so that somebody can profit and the consumer may not profit nearly as much health-wise. There's so many things that are claimed to be good for you. And the problem with that is if they're not, they've taken you away from the path of health, and it's hard to get back on and make the progress that you want. So even if you were in an ideal environment and you had access to the pharmacy, and you had transportation, you had safety, and you had access to food, but you're being bombarded with all these messages to say, you want to buy this, or you want to eat that, or you want to do this and that, which aren't necessarily in your best interest, it's still going to be hard to get to that state of good health.
Well, do we continue to pursue this notion of equity? I mean, I hear so often that I want equal treatment.
Okay.
I want equal opportunity. I want my environment to be the same or as good as or as whatever as other environments. And so recognizing the challenge of difficulty moving things from where they are. I mean, is there any way to catch up?
So I'm going to go back to the educational piece. because we have a group of individuals in our country who do not recognize the extent or the depth of the problem or the consequences of the problem. And what I'd say is, I read an article that was been published that's saying that this level of inequity costs us $454 billion annually if we maintain the status quo. So if we have a group of people concerned about deficits and productivity, why accept a situation making things worse instead of making it better? And the other thing that really kind of plagues me is every time we do that, we keep people from reaching their full potential. We're not in a state of the human race that we can afford to keep people from reaching their potential. We have problems with diseases. We have problems with the environment. We have problems with interpersonal relationships. We have problems with technology. And how can we afford to essentially keep us from getting to the solution? That's the part I'm having the most trouble with. So for me, I think that we have to be good farmers. We have to recognize that we need to water the crops. We need to fertilize the crops. We need to weed the crops and make sure that they can grow so that we have enough for everybody. Because otherwise the consequences is we won't, and then we'll have more violence, and then we won't have any progress at all.
And I guess you're saying we can't give up. I must admit that I sometimes run my blood pressure up trying to figure out stuff. I mean, I saw the No Kings demonstrations on television last week, and I must admit that I did not see, or I couldn't make out, a whole bunch of African Americans in those groups, and they were showing shots all over the country. I mean, not just in one part of the country, but they were flashing from everywhere. And I didn't see a lot of, or maybe the crowds were so big until I just couldn't pinpoint them. But if there were groups of darker skinned people there, maybe they would have been illuminated and I would have seen them, or I would have been able to discern that they were there, but I just didn't see them. I mean, we had our own little march and demonstration and so forth, but it was nothing like the massive turnout. And so it seems to me that dissatisfaction causes certain kinds of reaction, or if not reaction, the hope that something can change. And so if that hope does not exist or is not activated or demonstrated, is change likely to take place? I'm saying, and we illuminate all of the problems. I mean, we say there aren't any more African American males in medical school now than there were 40 years ago. Is that of great concern as we talk about the presence of culturally competent care for individuals who need it and who feel better when they get it? But how do we keep pressing on and say like the song at one of the churches where they say, "I'm pressing on, Lord, I'm freedom bound, plant my feet on higher ground, because we only halfway to yonder shore." And so I guess, how do we keep that momentum that's necessary to go after these lofty goals that we talk about?
Well, here's, I mean, some of the things that happen in life is this: is that um, people who are more acutely affected by change tend to be the first one to react to the change. So, and what I'm saying is that these changes that we are seeing are probably not as acute in terms of the deficits, in terms of the lack of support in the in for most African American as they are for people who maybe is feeling some pain that they had really kind of was floating above a little bit. And so the reaction will tend to be more acutely in those that have been floating above a little bit, because they're the one that feel acutely, as opposed to the group who has kind of been having been begotten somewhat that nobody should ever get used to not having their needs met. But I think we tend to get used to it from the standpoint that instead of us just going out expressing our frustration with it on a continual basis, that we kind of back down and sort of settle down with it and try to figure out another way. So that's one of the things. But I think another thing that's happening is that I think African Americans are trying to figure out where are these things going and how do I fit in it in a way that I'm going to benefit from change. I mean, there's a lot of rhetoric, and there's been a lot of rhetoric out there in terms of who is this and who's done what and who's not done what. And so people who've been suffering, they tend to say, you know what, I got to really look at this a little bit harder than maybe someone who has not really been feeling these same pain for a long period of time. And so I think some of the lack of visibility is probably related to some extent to that. Not that they aren't feeling the same pain, not that they don't want change to occur, but they're trying to figure out how do we make certain that because we've been hearing that things are going to get better, and we get $2, and then they take away a half a dollar, and then a month later the other half a dollar. And so you got to figure out how can we make changes that are going to be consistent, changes that are going to mount to us being getting to the point that we are trying to get to, getting some satisfaction, getting better health, getting better education, getting some of these other better living condition in our community. And so it's a bigger pot that I think that we are dealing with than other folks who maybe haven't had to deal with some of these issues, may have been getting some of those things. So we're probably less likely to see that. But I think that not that they're not ready to move, but they want to make certain that they when the movement occurs, that they're moving in the right direction, and not just moving for the sake of moving, but they're moving with a purpose. And that purpose is to move from that lower ground to a higher ground that is steady and solid. It does no good to move up and then fall right back down in the water. You're still gonna drown. You gotta be lifted up, but you gotta be lifted up on something that's solid, that will hold when you land on it. So I think that that has a lot to do with it, because as we talk and listen to different people seem to be African Americans seem to be kind of in a state of wondering and what's going to happen, and how much change is going to, how this change is going to make things better. Because I mean, we've seen some of these same changes over the past 50, 60 years or more. We've seen things move up, and then we've seen that hit a wall, and then everything is kind of being taken away. That the promises go away, the advancement began to begin to be to elude us again. So I think that's we want something solid, something that we can depend on, and some of that does depend on us being together, being consistent in our connectivity to one another, and consistent in our understanding of the system and knowing how to get the system to work best for us. Yeah, so I'll stop there and see what the other inputs are there.
So I had the grave concern that the reporting of the No Kings marches showed evidence of censorship. Previously, they'd been the introduction to the news. When I watched them this time, they were buried halfway in. I don't think they got the same amount of time as they had previously. So it would not surprise me, in addition, that things that might upset the president were also excluded as well, because he's been relatively relentless and ruthless by attempting to persecute those who disagree with him. So I think that there may have been some editorial judgment that took place to see this. The other thing that I would note is that while it's not happened very rapidly, this present core administration has been crumbling. And they've lost their attorney general. They're probably going to lose the head of their FBI. The courts have been relatively consistent in terms of rejecting his attempts at retaliation. And some of the things that he's attempted to do that were either racist or otherwise against the Constitution. So some of the momentum that he had previously in his first 12 months has begun to slow. And as his health fails, I think there'll be more opportunities for people to express themselves and try and reverse this unfortunate trend that we've witnessed when somebody has been given power without accountability. And I think that's probably going to be the greatest task of the following administration, is to how to not just have integrity, but accountability, so that people can't go off and do things just on impulse, on whim, that violate people's rights and the Constitution.
Yeah.
So I think people still believe in the Constitution. They're waiting for the right time to utilize it to restore the balance that we've lost and the progress that we've lost too.
Yes. Yeah.
I know of communities that are still deeply concerned about cultural competency and diversity, equity, inclusion, but they understand that they have more to lose right now by promoting it than they do by waiting. So I think that's kind of what Dr. Miller is saying too. They're biding their time. They're waiting for the time to begin to take that step forward.
Well, it seemed to me that everything that we tear down or let fail has to be rebuilt. And so I compare the decline of some institutional development with the war effort. You can tear down a nation, but if you tear down, now you got to come back and rebuild it. You know, we did all right in terms of World War II, but then we had to have a plan. And of course, some of the places in Europe that were devastated are still in that same state of devastation. I mean, I looked at some of what happened in Poland, or I looked at, on some of the European trips that I've been on, where the destruction is the same. I saw this, and I gotta make sure we have it, because I saw this West Side Burning documentary last week. Someplace had it over in Garfield Park, and I'm saying there's gotta be, some bigger groups and bigger audiences for people to kind of watch what happened where there was desolation and where people had kind of lost hope and expressed that loss of hope by burning down and burning up. And those areas have not been rebuilt. And it takes a lot to rebuild. So every time our missiles blow up something in Iran, eventually that's got to be rebuilt. That's got to be reconstituted. And so if we lose our health status, that too has to get rejuvenated if we can, to build it back up. And it's much better if we can keep it solidified as we move along than having to come back and try and repair that which has been destroyed, whether it's health or whether it's a community, whether it's a concept or an idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's still got to come back. And to do it is not easy. I must confess that I was flabbergasted when I heard the President of the United States making some threats on Easter Sunday that you just would not expect to come from the president of an enlightened nation, saying that, you know, we're going to do certain things by tomorrow or not do them. And yet many people don't seem to be too alarmed at that. Some people are,
Yeah.
but others are not. So I guess a luta continue is the struggle goes on.
Yeah. In medicine, we have something called the standard of care.
Mm-hmm.
And the standard of care or the standard of anything is what that standard is. And that standard doesn't always follow a level path. Sometimes it changes, sometimes it's up and down. And I think that some of the things that we're hearing from the president today, if we'd heard this from President 2 or 3 president removed, we would have been people would have been so shocked. But it doesn't shock people anymore. It's becoming the standard. So that standard, so we have to, I think, we do have to, I believe, move to a different standard because it should be shocking. We should be shocked by this. We should be upset. But, after a while, it get to be just, this is kind of what we hear all the time. So even though the behavior may not be considered normal, it's what we normally hear. So that becomes what people people after a while, they don't respond to the same thing if you keep telling someone, even though it's I can think, just the things that I've seen changes in my life. I lived some time in Mississippi, and during my childhood when I was there, we just didn't see people walking around shooting people. It just didn't, it happened, but it was very, very rare that somebody would just, shoot somebody. And usually that happened in a situation where there was some kind of some type of struggle going on. People just didn't walk up and shoot people. And we're seeing, so what I'm saying is that what is normal now is compared to what was going on in 1950 something and 1960 something is a totally different set of circumstances. So so yeah, but we do need to make certain that we don't get totally comfortable with these things that we are seeing happening on a regular basis, to the point that we begin to accept them without having any desires to challenge it and to change it. That's so important, that we don't lose our desires to make things become what they ought to be, and so that people cannot see and hear things that are just outside of what ought to be, and just say, well, that's how it is, and move on without doing something about it.
Well, though, Dr. Miller, I mean, it's nice for us to have these kind of conversations,
Mhm.
Because they don't go much further than this. And and I think what the congressman said earlier is, when you try to move it further than that, in order to really do something that might be able to, in some degree, make a change in one way or another, you run up against a lot of the institutional inertia
Yeah.
that really gets in the way of doing a lot of things. So much so that it almost stifles the ability for almost anything to be done in a significant time frame, where the whatever is going to be done will make a difference. I mean, what we talked about is a lot of stuff that we've talked about a lot of times, and we'll probably talk about it a lot more times. But the question, the question, and that's what I always come back to. And that's the question that came from a movie called The Color Purple. And it was an actor, her name was Celie. She was the wife of the bad guy, Mr. But she raised the question that I think is a question that we're really kind of struggling with right now, because we've talked about a lot of things. We've seen a lot of this come and go at different points in our lives and what have you. But the question really becomes, and I think the congressman alluded to it a little earlier, is what Celie said in the movie. She said, he asked the question, because there was a lot of things going on, but she asked the question. She said, what us gonna do? That's what Celie asked. What us gonna do? And so the question I have is the question for us. We always have a lot of conversations about a lot of things, but at the end of the day, in some things, and because there is a process and it takes time, but at some point we got to move the conversation from just conversation. And the congressman has been doing a number of things in many ways to try and do that over many years.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, we got to move as a group of people to what us gonna do. And that means us getting ourselves truly engaged in this in a way. And when we begin to look at what we gonna or what we should do, we'll also uncover some things that we may not have well uncovered, that describe why we're in some of the mess that we're in, that what it was that got it undone, that needs now that we have to redo it. And so I think it's a great conversation. I think we need to think about what are the things where we can have some kind of impact, not tomorrow, but certainly in sooner times than we've been doing, and leverage the resources as well as we can, which I think we've been trying to do. And until we really get the final change in the White House, there may be some other things that we need to be thinking about in terms of our timetable and our ability to move forward with things that we think need to be moved forward on.
I agree with you 100%, and that's part of the congressman says that he believes in planning, and that's part of what planning is about. Looking at what resources that we have, looking at the conditions and problem that we have, and finding out, well, I can't do this, but I can do that, and moving and doing those things. Because as the other if opportunity to do other things are become available, we need to be prepared to take advantage of those things. And so you need to, again, that plan and make preparation to do it. Otherwise, if we're just sitting there, like you said, just conversating about it, not making any plans, then what mostly happens on those times is that when the window of opportunity is open, you don't go through it. You just stand there still talking as opposed to moving ahead.
And every little bit helps.
Every
I tell you, I was at Progressive Church a few Sundays ago, and I was very thrilled and delighted that they were mixing economic messages with their faith message. That is, urging people to shop at Black-owned businesses and stores. I said, right on. This is the kind of Christianity. This is the kind of religion. This is the kind of messaging. This is a use. And I confess that I was just what makes me happy. I mean, I almost started shouting when I saw the flow of information and where they put on the screen businesses in the community that were partnering with the church, because all aspects of these things go together. I mean, there are some people who can do economics. There are some people who can do something else. There are some people who can do education. There are some people who can bring it or help bring it all together. And I think that is what needs to happen. Some people do the politics stuff, try to get laws passed and all. But if everybody is doing what they can and what they're good at doing, then to me, that changes the environment. And if you change the environment, you change the health status and you keep moving forward. So I agree with everything that is being said. We just got to do more of it.
Well, outstanding. Want to say hey to Dorothy Murphy, who is here, and she says good evening to everyone. Audrey Jaycox is here, and she says good evening to everyone just as well. I see we have Sean Harris here, and he's saying good evening. We also have Sister Bonnie here. Hey, Sister Bonnie, how are you? She's here with us. Renelle Perry is here with us. Josie Ware is here with us. Bridget is here with us on today listening. Thank you so very much. Kathleen Johnson is here with us listening on today, and she says, right on. All right, Kathleen, thank you for sharing. Derek Tyler is here, and he's saying good evening to everyone just as well. Tina Hammond is here, and she says good evening to everyone. And Chief Valdemir Talley is here with us as well. Sharon Conway is here with us just as well, and she's saying good evening to everyone. Well, Dr. Miller, keep it rolling.
All righty. Well, let's see. Where are we? Are we at the time to give
About that time, I guess.
Until
next week? Dr. Graham, you want to give your until next week?
Thank you. First thing, I'd like to really apologize to the audience for last week. I really didn't care for my tone and my choice of words. I apologize. I was irritated and annoyed by somebody else that it spilled over. But I would comment that I know that we're in very difficult and challenging times. But if we have patience, we'll be able to emerge on the other side. It's not diversity, equity, inclusion that caused inflation. It didn't cause the war in Iran. It didn't cause tariffs. There are lots of things that are going wrong, and you can say it wasn't because of us. we don't have to let scapegoating take place again, and we can really point towards accountability and honesty about what happened and why. So I think it gives us a chance for a real opportunity to make progress. And that's my thought is there will be that opportunity. We just have to be prepared to take it when it comes.
Dr. Mason?
I would agree with what Doug is saying, and I think that we need to do more of that, and we need to parcel out those things that we can do, no matter how big or small they are. But if we can do them, we should just go ahead and do them, and be that beacon of light for others and incentive for others to begin to think about how they can begin to spread that in their own communities. And lastly, we want to thank the Congress. I want to thank the Congressman for what he's always been doing, but I want to make sure that we really take a hard look at, because the difficult days are not just behind us, they're also ahead of us.
Yes, yeah.
And so we've got to do that, and we'll be ready for it and get it done.
Well, I'm going to just say we got to keep the faith. If you can keep your head up and keep looking towards the goals that you're trying to reach, and not really let those that defeat you without you putting up a good fight. Then you have an opportunity to overcome some things. And I know it's difficult, and I know that it's going to be difficult moving forward. But that doesn't mean that we can't move forward. Just because it's hard doesn't mean that we got to stop. We have to. If the times are getting tough, we got to get a little tougher in terms of dealing with it. How we deal with it, we got to get a little smarter in terms of how we deal with it, and be prepared to take advantage of opportunities when they do arrive. So that's my until next Monday.
Well, Congressman, take us home.
You know, Doc, when you said if, I thought of Kipling.
Yeah.
If you can keep your head when all about you is losing there, blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowances for their doubting too.
Then
if you can try and don't get too upset when you fail, just keep on trying. And I think that's kind of the if you can keep believing.
Yeah.
And I think believing is just as important as doing, because if you don't believe,
yeah, you won't do.
You won't do.
No.
I mean, you just will not do if you don't believe. I mean, I think that Illinois stopped believing the other night, or the other day, and the ball just wouldn't go in. It might go around the rim. It may go side of the rim, but it just wasn't going in the rim and through the net.
Yeah.
Therefore, they're not in the game tonight. So you gotta
believe
it, and it's hard to get people to believe that things can be different, that things can actually change, that you can overcome the obstacles. You know, I grew up on a farm in the country, and people had all these country kind of stories. And this one guy had a horse that seemingly could jump the widest ditches. And somebody asked the guy who owned the horse, say, how do you manage to get over these big mud holes and stuff? And he'd say, I decide that if I can get my mind across, the horse is bound to follow. And so if we can get our minds wrapped around certain concepts, principles, thoughts, and ideas, the action is bound to follow. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody. Another wonderful evening. And until next Monday, keep on believing.
Thank you.
All righty.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Good night.
All right.